Live from MMA Fighting Studios, this is Between the Links. And now, your host, Mike Heck.
The iconic voice of Esther Lynn welcomes you to a brand new edition of BTL. It's another Thursday. We are 2 days away from UFC 295. No, we are not getting Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic, but what we are getting is an incredible light heavyweight championship main event, a fascinating interim heavyweight championship co-main event. These top two fights are great. We'll talk about Saturday. We'll talk about the UFC's first quarter of 2024 and how that's shaping up. And we'll do some quick cleanup work from this past weekend. And joining me in doing all of this, the two combatants. Let me introduce them first. He's Mr. No Hot Take, Mr. No Gray Area, one half of the No Bets Bar team, the man behind Damn They Were Good. He's the Cannonball Kid from MMAfighting.com. Mr. Jed Meshew, his first appearance since slaying the beast. That is Mr. Brian Campbell. Hello, sir.
I should have just gone out on top, honestly. I should have just retired forever after beating BC. It's a once-in-a-lifetime accomplishment, much like what Alex Pereira is about to do this weekend. He and I are of the same ilk at this stage, so I'm excited to be here, Mike.
Keep this on Jed, please, if you don't mind, because I forgot all about this. Last time you were on, you left us wanting more at the Cannonball, and then this week, you show up looking a little different, Jed. Look at the hair, or lack thereof.
Had to take it down. Look, I'd wanted to get rid of it for a while. Finally had enough for Locks for Love, and we took it off and donated to a very good cause. Who doesn't support children with cancer? So, you know, that's where we're at.
Look at that.
I gave you the spin.
Looking like Zach Morris in 1991 at Bayside High. And speaking
I could just get the big phone.
Speaking of phone, you need the big cellular telephone. And speaking of short hair, much like myself, back on the show for the second time, I had to cash in a favor here, and he was gracious enough to accept the proposal. He is the Combat Sports senior writer for the Sporting News. You may hear his melodious tones on Sirius XM and many other things. Welcome back to the show, Mr. Andreas Hale. Andreas, how are you, my man?
Yeah, I don't like seeing this 0-1 next to my name, but I'm feeling good, though. But I don't like this 0-1, bro. I don't like it. We got to fix that.
It's all right.
Brock Lesnar was 0-1 once upon a time.
That's
and look what he all went on to accomplish.
That's true. Okay, I'll accept it.
AK was like 0-11 to start his BTL run. He had to look at that every single time he was on, but that's
Brock
neither
Lesnar,
here nor
Brock
there.
Lesnar won his first professional fight, by the way.
We're not counting whatever the nonsense. We only count real fights in the UFC, Casey.
UFC.
Yes. Well, UFC 295 going down on Saturday. We will get there, but first let's clean up from UFC Sao Paulo real quick. Figured it was important to discuss what happened in the main event, since it's a topic that still divides the MMA community in a lot of ways. Jailton Almeida absolutely dominates Derrick Lewis this past Saturday over 25 minutes. A couple of 50-44s. Some scored it even more dominance. Even some people on our website scored it 50-40 for Jailton Almeida. I certainly did not, but while the performance was dominant, it hasn't really been all sunshine and roses for one Jailton Almeida, getting some heat for not finishing Derrick Lewis, the fight not being aesthetically pleasing, if you will. Jed, we'll start with you. We have not gotten your reaction to this fight on these wonderful programs. On the post-fight show, the Prince of Positivity, AK, gave Almeida a B. I gave him a C+. New York Rick gave him an F, Jed Meshew. Where are you grading Jailton
That's
Almeida?
obviously insane. An F is very clearly a nuts maneuver. B+, A-, somewhere in there. Look, I know that this is, one, weird to hear from me, the king of the hot take, and two, just odd in this day and age, but I have the brain capacity to hold two thoughts in my head at the same time, and I think that's what we can do here. We can all acknowledge that, like, I don't know, winning a 50-40 decision is dominant and good and better than losing or not winning as dominantly. But at the same time, that can still leave us wanting more, which is what Jailton did. I think it is the expectations for him are probably a little higher than is maybe fair given what he has done. But at the same time, like, he could have tried harder to finish that fight. Like there was an opportunity for him to accept a little more risk into his profile to finish the fight. And I've had this argument with a bunch of people over the years. Casey and I have sort of competed here at various points for various fighters. I think that it is less risky to try to finish fights than it is to, I'm just going to sit on this dude for 5 full rounds and attempt the same arm triangle 700 times. Because we saw that, like, there were moments when the fight got back to the feet and started, maybe Derrick Lewis had a chance, whereas it's hard to be perfect for 25 minutes. It's easier to just finish the dude. And Jailton either wasn't willing to accept some risk, which I think is certainly a part of this, and also just doesn't have the tools. He is still a limited fighter. What he can do is great. And in a weak ass heavyweight division, it might be good enough to just win a belt, dude. Like, still totally viable, but you would have liked to see him try to ground and pound a little more, try and throw elbows from the mounted position. The time he did try and open up strikes, Derrick Lewis looked like he was pretty close to getting out of there. So I think it's fair to assess the faults in that performance while also acknowledging, dude, he hung a 50-40 on a guy, man. Like, that's pretty freaking good. Like, how are you going to call a 50-40 an F? That's just bullshit. So, yeah, I think it's okay to see both sides of the performance and recognize it for what it was.
Andreas, Almeida checked off the most important box. He won. But this fight happening a week before the interim title fight at UFC 295, did Jailton Almeida get a high mark from you, especially with the timing of that fight?
No, not high enough. This was a B if you had to grade it. I mean, he was dominant, yes, but in a division that is thin, and in a division where you may be a fight away from getting a world title opportunity, you also need to impress. And a lot of people weren't terribly impressed with that particular performance because he didn't go after the finish when he seemed like he had a pretty vulnerable Derrick Lewis on his back for a majority of the fight. But he was dominant. So I can't, giving New York Rick giving him an F, bro. What's wrong with you? He dominated the fight, bro. Like, there's no F in domination. That's crazy. But you would like to see a little bit more because somebody like Jailton Almeida, a lot of us have pegged him as a potential future title contender. But if you don't impress, which is one of those things that separate the good for the great in most divisions, if you're not impressive in getting that finish, you may lose out on that opportunity. So a B minus performance. Look, Derrick Lewis is always going to be dangerous when the fight gets back to his feet. So I agree with Jed to that point. Every time a round starts, you got to worry about Derrick finishing you. But Jailton managed to get the fight back to the mat. You just got to finish the guy. And did he say he had tiny forearms and that was the issue? I don't even know what that's all about. But, bro, at some point, you have to go for that finish and you have to execute. He didn't do that, so he gets a B from me because he was very dominant, but I would like to see him have a sense of urgency to finish the job.
Andreas, Almeida called for Cyril Gane after the win, which in my opinion was the correct call out. You know, he's the number one ranked guy in the division, according to the UFC. Not a lot of grappling prowess, to say the least. So this is a smart call out, but I'm not sure this is the fight that will A, happen, or B, answer the remaining questions we have about Jailton Almeida. But who knows? Maybe the UFC does go and make this fight. So do you think that's the fight they make, or maybe go back to Curtis Blades? Is there a different fight that makes sense to you? Where does Jailton go after this performance?
Yeah, you probably go with the Curtis Blades fight. Look, Cyril Gane ain't going to teach you jack shit. Cyril Gane can't wrestle. He's going to get taken down. He's going to get submitted. That's pretty much what's going to happen. We all know it. All you have to do is get past the striking. I'd rather see a Curtis Blades fight because he's going to have to deal with somebody who's going to want to bring the fight to the canvas as well. I think it's more intriguing. Based on this performance, you don't get the number one guy. I'm not giving that to you. And you don't give the number one guy with a serious hole in his game that you are going to exploit. I'm not ready for that. I'd rather see him fight Curtis Blades. Will work from there.
Jed, I don't even think Cyril Gane will even entertain that fight. He wasn't going to entertain anything else but a title fight anyways. And then after watching Jailton Almeida just smush Derrick Lewis for 25 minutes, I don't think he's touching this fight with the 10-foot pole. But like you have been saying on Twitter, this is a great call out. This is actually perfect. Terrific. A perfect call out. But how realistic is it? What do you think he gets now?
Say it's marginally realistic. I think he's got a shot at it. Not that Cyril wants it, but I don't think Cyril gets to call his shots. Like, Cyril got mushed like 10 months ago, man. Like, I know you beat Sergei Spivak, but my dude, it's Sergei Spivak. Like, you're not calling shit for shots right now. Maybe Cyril Gane does get the winner of the interim title fight this weekend. Because I assume that that's what will happen. The interim title fight is, for all intents and purposes, title fight. We'll talk more about that. So maybe that's where Cyril goes, but it also wouldn't shock me if the UFC was just like, we're going to we're going to make you do at least one more before we put you back in there. I think it's a terrific call out though. Squeaky wheel gets the grease. Why fight Curtis Blades? Who will wreck your shit? Because that is my big takeaway this weekend. You asked for a grade. My big takeaway from Sao Paulo was, okay, that's the ceiling. We found the limit where Jailton Almeida ends, and it's Curtis Blades. Curtis Blades is not going to get taken down at will, and he's probably just going to roughhouse Jailton Almeida all over the cage for 25 minutes after the fact. So, that's just how I feel about it. I think he's got a great shot against Cyril Gane, but it is at least an elevation. Like Cyril Gane is slightly more difficult to take down than Derrick Lewis, I think. Maybe not. I honestly don't know, but I think it's a great call out. And it seems like he might get it because who the hell else do you give him, right? Like we got the interim title fight coming up. Where does he go? I guess Curtis Blades. I don't know how long Curtis is out. So I think calling that shot was a good move. And I think he's got at least some chance to make that happen for himself.
Would you favor Curtis Blades, Andreas, in that fight after what we saw on Saturday?
Yes, not by a wide margin. I'm very curious about Curtis Blades and, the tread on his tires at this point. And I think Jailton Almeida can still make improvements, but I think that Curtis Blades will be a lot more physical in the infighting and the grappling game than Derrick Lewis was. So right now, I would give Curtis Blades the edge, just not a wide edge. I think if it was a betting line, it'd maybe be a 2-1 favorite at this point, maybe 1.5-1.
Yeah, I want the Blades fight. That was such great matchmaking to begin with. Like that was the one that was going to answer a lot of the questions. And look, it may not be aesthetically pleasing, but if Jailton Almeida does to Curtis Blades what he did to Derrick Lewis, finish or no finish, man's going to be a big problem. He is going to be a big problem.
I mean, if he does it, then he's the best heavyweight competing in mixed martial arts. Like that's just it. Because I don't know. We've seen Curtis Blade lose in the exact same way. Some dude who hits him real hard, and that's it. That's not Jailton's game. If he dominates him, then I don't know who's stopping him doing that.
That'll be an interesting fight, but there's some interesting fights coming up this Saturday at the Mecca, and that's where we're going. The main event of the show. The point for round one goes to Jed Meshew, 1-0. Welcome back, Jed. You get a point.
It's the good hair.
It's the haircut, and congratulations for all of that. So let's go to UFC 295. The UFC back at MSG. No Jon Jones, no Stipe Miocic, but the main event is for the vacant light heavyweight title. Jiri Prochazka returns for the first time since his incredible title-winning battle with Glover Teixeira. First fight since suffering the shoulder injury that Dana White describes as the worst shoulder injury he's ever seen. And he faces Alex Pereira, the former middleweight champion. Andreas, if we're not getting the casual appeal and the aura of a Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic fight at Madison Square Garden, it's hard to find something better than this to headline this event, wouldn't you say?
Oh, hell yeah. Like, sometimes when a fight falls out, and we all know, like, Jon Jones was going to smash Stipe Miocic. That was a glorified squash match for Jon Jones. This, on the other hand, far more competitive, far more predictable. 2023 has been a very weird year, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say there's no way this fight's going to suck, right? Like, there's just no way. Anybody tuning in or spending their money for this fight is going to get a cracker for as long as it lasts. So I'm not mad at it. I get it. It sucks for New York. You would like to see Jon Jones. It takes, the card's taking a little bit of a hit for the casual fan. But for the hardcores, for the people that are watching this show, for us, this is what we want. We want the banger. We want the cracker, and somebody's probably going night-night.
Jed, we're 2 days away from this. We know how excited you are. Paint us a word picture of how excited you are for this Prochazka Pereira fight on the eve of this main event.
Mike, I say it all the time, and the last month and a half has really reinforced it. The UFC is just 1 or 2 injuries away from making a good fight card. If you leave them to their own devices, they're gonna freaking bundle it. They just don't know how to do it. But then somebody gets injured, and suddenly it's ooh, the good fights are here. We don't have to watch this mercy killing of Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic. That no one is under any illusions how that's gonna go. Instead, we get to watch the fight that pretty universally was the most anticipated for the back 3-month stretch of this calendar. We did show or an article. We did something like a couple of weeks ago before the Jon Jones Stipe fight fell out. It was like, pick your 3 most anticipated fights of the remaining of the calendar. And none of us had Stipe Jon on the list because no one gave a shit about it. But all of us universally were like, yeah, it's Pereira Jiri. Like that's the one. So now that gets the headline and we get a real heavyweight title fight in the co-main event. I know that some people out there will have their feelings, and you're allowed to have those feelings. You're wrong, but you're allowed to have them. This is not an interim belt. This is for the actual heavyweight championship of the world, because Jon fighting Stipe doesn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything in the year of our Lord 2023, and it sure as shit doesn't mean anything midway through 2024. Stipe will have not fought for like 3 years and not won since this presidential administration came into office. Like it's just not a real heavyweight title fight. And Jon beats Cyril Gane. That's absolutely great. He's going to beat Stipe and he's going to leave the sport, if not retire. So the guys fighting this weekend, they're fighting for the real heavyweight belt insofar as that means something. And it's a double fight. I have no idea what's going to happen. It's an incredibly confusing fight because they have a combined 4 minutes of fight time or something like that. But these are 2 fights that are awesome. This event got so much better by Jon Jones and Stipe falling out. Maybe it's not as appealing casually. Connor Burks was telling me about the vibes aren't, just not the same as a Jon Jones fight week. I never identify with Jon in that way. And so particularly for a fight that didn't mean anything, I'm way more pumped about this event. 295 is sick. I'm super pumped for Saturday.
We'll talk more about some of the things you just said, including the co-main event in the next round. But let's stick with the main event, Jed, because whoever wins this fight, it's just incredible statistically, because Jiri will become a 2-time UFC champion in just his 4th UFC fight without actually losing the belt in a fight, while Pereira, who's already a 2-division glory champion, soon to be Hall of Famer, can become a 2-division UFC champ in just his 11th professional MMA fight, which is just ridiculous. So short-term, Jed, it's incredible for either guy. We can break down this fight all we want. It's just going to be awesome. But I want to ask you this question. What's the more interesting world moving forward in your eyes? A world where Jiri reclaims the title, or a world where Alex Pereira is light heavyweight champion?
I mean, first, we don't have to pretend like Jiri wasn't the champion. Jiri never left our top spot in the rankings. Jiri vacated the title, wasn't really forced to, but did it just because feelings or whatever. He's been the champ this whole time. Technically, this is not a title defense. This is just title defense. He's still the champ's title defense. And the whole Glover and Goliath, all of that weirdness with Jamal Hill, etc. That's just an odd asterisk here. Jiri's been the champ this whole time. Obviously, even if we don't hold that to be true, the more interesting outcome is Alex Pereira continuing to break MMA, because he doesn't make sense. Like this is like 10th fight or something very stupid, like some impossibly few number of fights overall, much less in the UFC. And he's going to be one of 9 people, if he wins this, to be multi-division champions in this promotion history. Like he broke our rankings when he won the belt, and he's just been breaking our understanding of how this sport works forever since he joined up. So it's obviously more interesting because, again, like he'll deserve it. If he goes out there and beats here, he deserves to be the champion. You could convince me that like 10 different dudes in the weight class could beat him the same way you could have convinced me that at middleweight. Like he is the anomaly of all anomalies, and he's guys like him, stories like him are what make this sport really fun, even 20 years into my fandom.
Andreas, do you agree with that? That, look, it's very cool. Alex Pereira winning the belt, 2-division champ in such a short amount of time. Like, that's insane. But long-term for this division, which has been broken ever since Jon basically vacated the belt. We thought when Jiri won it, we had some semblance of normalcy, even though Jiri is far from normal, and we love him for it. But then the injury happens. He vacates the belt, even though I don't fully believe that's what happened. I think he was a friendly nudge, so to speak, from the UFC. But do you feel this division is more interesting with Pereira as champion, or with Jiri as champion, And then whoever loses, like the questions remain, like what's next for Pereira if he loses this fight? What's next for Prochazka if he loses this fight? Like what's the more interesting long-term storyline for this division based on what could happen on Saturday?
For me, it's Jiri Prochazka, and here's why. Jiri Prochazka is just a fascinating individual, a man who locks himself in the dark for days at a time, has so much appeal, and I feel like if he didn't get injured, he'd probably still be the champion of this very cursed division. I think what the UFC is missing right now is a long-reigning champion. I think there's a crazy stat out there. I believe that a new champion has been crowned 14 times in the last 17 months, I believe. That means the title is just constantly changing hands, which gives people a very hard time to sink their teeth into one fighter sitting on top of a division. I think Jiri Prochazka could be a guy, if he beats Alex Pereira, who can rule this division for some time. There's some interesting matchups there. Alex Pereira, while he continues to break MMA, Jed said it. He looks very beatable by a host of other fighters in this division, and he may not be the champion by this time next year. I think if Jiri beats Alex Pereira, that dude could maybe even challenge Jon Jones as one of the greatest light heavyweights in the history of this division. It's a long shot because MMA is such a volatile sport. But if you give me one guy that I think could make a reign and rule and has that intrigue that people are going to tune in and want to see this man fight or see his interviews or hear what crazy shit he's done, it's Jiri Prochazka. So I think the future of the light heavyweight division rests on his shoulders if he wins. But if Alex wins, I don't give a shit. He just keeps breaking MMA, and it's going to be fun to watch. But give me Jiri in this conversation.
Jamal Hill versus either of these guys is just super fun and super intriguing, but we'll see if that even happens because you don't know how long Jamal's going to be out for. We don't really need to sell
Jamal
you
Hill
on this.
Might not be good either. That's the other part.
That's what I'm saying.
He had one awesome performance, and prior to that, we're like, he's not very good because he keeps not being very good, and then he showed out against Glover. I don't know what the hell's going on in this sport anymore, Mike.
Yeah, but that's why I want to see. That's why I want to see him against either of these two guys. That's
super intriguing.
That'll answer the questions. Absolutely. Again, we don't need to really sell you on this fight. It's going to be absolutely awesome. So we won't really break it down. We'll have a preview show obviously tomorrow. We'll get a little bit more in depth. But before we go to the co-main event specifically, Andreas, the UFC's trip to MSG, always one of the major cards of the year. And they, of course, wanted star power at the top before Jon Jones got injured. We have the two title fights. We'll get into the co-main event round 3. We have a strawweight fight that matters in the featured spot between Mackenzie Dern and Jessica Andrade. Matt Frevola versus Benoit Saint-Denis is a wild fight. And we get Diego Lopez vying for that Rookie of the Year spot against Pat Sabatini. That's your main card. We get some interesting prelims as well. But for what this MSG trip usually brings for the UFC, how would you grade the overall card?
C+. The New York cards, the prelims are always packed with names and talent. This is it's pretty top heavy. Again, the New York cards are pretty appealing to a casual viewer. It's a card other than International Fight Week. Whenever the UFC goes to New York, that's where everybody tunes in. This feels like a hardcore fan's wet dream, but a casual fan, on the other hand, may opt to pass because you don't have a Jon Jones or you don't have a Conor McGregor headlining this card. So it's a C+ card on the casual scale, which is the New York MSG scale. But as a card as a whole for us, it's an A. But for the lineage of those New York cards, it kind of falls in the middle.
Jed, what do you think? Let's just look at UFC 281 last year. Main event was Pereira winning the title against Izzy. Zhang Weili becomes the champion against Carlos Esparza. Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, Chris Gutierrez retired Frankie Edgar in just the saddest way possible. Dan Hooker, Claudio Puelles, featured prelim, Renato Moicano, Brad Riddell, and Moicano cut the promo of the lifetime. Ryan Spann said Dominic Reyes into another realm. Erin Blanchfield had her coming out party. This is a loaded freaking card. Matt Frevola had the big moment. Carlos Ulberg was in the first fight of the card. Where does this rank? How do you grade this card as a whole, just based on what the UFC usually brings to MSG?
I think this is better than 281. I think with the Jon Jones Stipe fight, this feels like it might feel bigger because Jon Jones Stipe is being billed as this thing that matters. But really, that's the same fight as Carlos Esparza, Weili Zhang. It's just a murder that we're pretending isn't a murder for whatever reasons. Instead, we get two dope fights. Getting Poirier is that's better. Like we're missing out on a critical, like the Poirier Chandler feature bout is better than Dern Andrade feature bout a little bit, but I think the top two fights are better, and then the rest of it's still really good. Mafrafol Benoit Saint-Denis is going to be a banger. The fight's going to be insane. Diego Lopez, Pat Sabatini is going to have 6 scrambles all up and down that thing. Not high on name value, but probably going to be high on entertainment. Steve Erceg, decent little fighter. Lupe Godinez, I'm always in for. Like, I think this is certainly less high on name value, but I think the outcome here is probably going to end up better and slightly more entertaining. And again, the only way that main event isn't like a fight of the year is if somebody gets booped early. Like other than that, that fight's going to be absolutely insane. So this is as good to me as the last like couple iterations of NYC.
We'll see how it plays out. This could be
2 stars, Mike. It's two Michelin stars here. It's a great card.
2 Michelin stars. It's pretty good. That's
Two
pretty
Michelin
good.
stars.
Explain to Andreas what 2 Michelin stars means.
Andreas, are you familiar with the Michelin guide and how their star system works?
Oh yes, I've been trying to get into a Michelin restaurant for the last 2 months. Absolutely.
Oh, I stole their guide to rank fight cards of, hey, this is, if I'm in town, I would go to this. I would take a journey. I would go out of my way to go to this. I would take a special flight to go to this. If I'm in the Northeast and it's a couple hours away, I would go to this card. I'm not going to buy a plane flight up to NYC for this event, but I know you will, Mike. Good for you. But I'm not going to do that. But if I were, somewhere in the trainish area, DC, I could catch the train up there. Hell yeah, I'm doing that.
That
Well,
makes
let's be
sense.
clear. Yeah, let's be clear. I'm hop on a plane to NYC not to go to the fights, but to hang out with GC in the studio. That's why I'm here, and
It's better.
hang out with Paca Porter on the watch party because he's going to be on for the co-main event, which we're going to talk about in a matter of moments. The point for round 2 goes to the man with the shorter hair, Andreas. It's 1-1. Nicely done. Good job.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
All right. So let's go to this
Hell
co-main
yeah.
event. Hell yeah. Sergei Pavlovich versus Tommy Aspinall. We got this incredible fight for the interim heavyweight title. The fight we were probably going to get anyways, whether there was going to be a title on the line or not. The bad part about it, it is short notice, but both guys are in. They signed the contract, and they're quite confident that they will emerge as the new interim heavyweight champion when the night is over. So, Jed, you talked about this fight as, part of the 1-2 punch, but you saw some media day scrums. Tom Aspinall, continuously went back to, I wish I wasn't taking this fight on short notice, but just hearing some of the storylines and how Tom has basically prepared for this moment almost his whole life, with his father basically saying, hey, the most important thing you can learn in training martial arts is don't get hit. I kind of feel like it's all going to come full circle here, because if he doesn't get hit, this is going to be a really interesting fight. Where are you at with this one? Excitement levels 1 to 10. Where are you at for this fight?
This fight rules. This fight is the true heavyweight. Like, if being the heavyweight champion means you're a person who is actively participating in the weight class and is going to continue to do that, then this is legit, and it's like a totally legitimate heavyweight title fight. It would be better if they came on short notice, but look, we're still getting 2 of the top 5 guys in the world, kind of guys that everybody has earmarked, along with Jailton Almeida, as sort of the next iteration of this weight class moving forward. So this is it. As far as I'm concerned, this is a true heavyweight title fight, and I don't have any idea what's going on. This is the most fascinating fight in the world, because you could tell me anything happens here and I'd buy it. The only outcome to this that I would be surprised by would be if it goes 25 minutes. But even that, I can see we've never seen either dude compete longer than really 5 minutes. So if they both just gas out and then hold each other for the back 20, I guess that's explicable. You could convince me that that's the thing that happened. But if Sergei Pavlovich comes out and shoots a takedown and just RNC's Tom Aspinall, I won't be shocked. We just don't know anything. For as much talk is made out of Alex Pereira being, so new to the sport and not having this experience. Want to know a fun fact, Mike? Alex Pereira has more fight time than these 2 men combined. And You could even add in Jiri Prochazka's UFC fight time there. He has more UFC fight time than the other 3 dudes in the big fights this weekend combined. That's how little we know about Sergei Pavlovich and Tom Aspinall. We know that when they touch people, they fall and die. That's the only things that we know. And so I don't know what's going to happen. That makes it really fascinating to me because they might suck. They might not be good, but they're certainly good enough in this weight class. And it rules. I love the chaos that is going on in this entire sport right now.
Andrea, same question for you, your excitement levels. And do you agree with Jed that the winner of this fight at least should be recognized in a lot of respects as the actual heavyweight champion? Like, will you come out of this fight being like, hey, if Tom Aspinall and Sergei Pavlovich win, even with John as the champion right now, this guy's the number 1 heavyweight in the UFC, bar none?
Hell no. No, you have to beat Jon Jones to be the heavyweight champion of the world right now. Look,
you're never going to get the chance.
Look, I get it. Jed, I completely understand what you're saying, but this is the rationale here is because you don't believe that John's going to fight either of these guys because the man's looking probably retirement right in the face. But
they also beat his ass right now because he doesn't have a working shoulder. So, what's up?
Hey, but look, John is the champ. He beat Cyril Gane. He just smushed the man. He is the champ. Aspinall and Pavlovich, the winner of this will be the interim champ until they are elevated to heavyweight champ. Jon Jones is the greatest fighter on the planet today, and he holds the title. I can't give the title to somebody else who, like you said, we don't know if these guys suck. I can't call him the heavyweight champion of the world and say they're better than Jon Jones. Not today, not tomorrow. I don't give a shit what happens on Saturday night. No, Jon Jones is still the reigning defending heavyweight champion until Dana White says give up that belt. But to the other point, where do I rank? Like, what is my excitement level? It's a 10. Want to know why? Because what Jess said. I don't know what the fuck is going to happen. I have no idea. I don't have a clue. Sir, like Pavlovich has nuked everybody. He's never had a submission in his career. He could submit Tom Aspinall, and I'd be like, cool, I get it. Tom Aspinall. He just murks everybody. He went to the second round with Andrei Arlovski, but who gives a shit? He could get a twister, and I'd be like, that checks out. I have no idea what's about to happen. This could be Francis Ngannou versus Derrick Lewis, where 2 guys just stare at each other, and we're all pissed off. I have no idea, but that's why I'm excited about it. I can't wait for the fight to play out because I have no idea what the hell is going on, but I'm excited at the prospect that somebody's probably going to die within 25 minutes. I'm here for that. Check, please.
This Francis Ngannou erasure will not stand. Best fighter in the world, my ass. I watched Francis Ngannou outbox Tyson Fury. That man's got him all the way.
He did not outbox Tyson Fury. He just did better than anybody anticipated. He did not win that fight. Y'all got to relax.
Pride rules, baby. Pride rules. One man took a knee, the other didn't. Game.
I can't.
Look, coming off the playground, we all know who won that fight coming off the playground. Ain't nobody gonna be like, well, Tyson, you jabbed him up. They're gonna be like, Tyson, you suck.
That's fair, but it was a boxing match in Saudi Arabia, and there were judges, and Tyson Fury outboxed Francis Ngannou, as craptastic as he looked. He won the fight on the scorecards, rightfully so. Francis Ngannou just surprised the hell out of everybody.
Scorecards didn't win it right here. He didn't win it where it counts, in my heart and in my mind.
Jed, I don't care about your heart nor your mind. I don't give a shit. I don't care. Jon Jones is still the best UFC MMA fighter in the world. I don't care what anybody says. Till that man loses.
Let's we could talk about Francis and Tyson and our thoughts on that fight all day long. But Jed, I want to go back to you because you said something interesting earlier, and I was kind of surprised to hear you say this because you've been on the side that even if this Jones-Stipe fight were to happen on Saturday, you felt like John might actually stick around and try to get to or maybe even break Stipe's UFC heavyweight title wins record because that's something that he hasn't accomplished. And what a way to go out if you accomplish that feat as well. Now we have this injury, we have this delay, etc. It's obviously changed things. Do you see a world now with all of these factors in play where after John fights Stipe, if he wins, do you feel the same way where you think John might stick around to unify the titles in order to maybe get to that number? Or do you think the way this is played out, that might not happen anymore? He just beats Stipe and rides off into the sunset.
I think he should. At this point, I don't think he will. Mainly because he not so subtly just sort of said it at various points, has kind of explicitly hinted that the Stipe fight will be maybe not his last fight forever, but at least the last fight for a while. And it does make sense as an endpoint for him. He's not gaining a ton by accepting any more risk here and fighting this other crop of up and comers. My contention was always pretty simple. He beats Stipe. He's 2 title defenses away from then having the most light heavyweight and the most heavyweight, and then really just having an unimpeachable case for goatness in that respect. And so I thought that would kind of look like it would be viable. Like, okay, beat Stipe, and then you're going to fight Sergei Pavlovich, who all you have to do is take him down. And we saw what Alistair Overeem did to him. Like, John can obviously replicate that. Granted, 5 years ago, but whatever. For the sake of this argument, we're going to go with that. And then maybe his last fight is a big one against Tommy Aspinall, or hell, if Jailton Almeida is the dude, then all you have to do is stuff Jailton Almeida's takedowns. It just seemed like a really clear path for him to do that. I think the injury is probably going to make him reevaluate the wiseness of doing that. And Stipe is just the biggest fish for the least amount of risk. And if he beats Stipe, then I think that he's probably just done. And, good for him. He had one of, if not the absolute best careers we've ever seen, and he deserves to go out on top.
Andreas, I've been on record many times, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday on your show, that if this fight were to happen on Saturday and John won, Stipe would retire. John would at least at minimum take a long sabbatical, at least for a year, and see if things happen. But now we have this delay, and Tom Aspinall is on the cusp of something big happening right now. And for some reason, Tom has been the only guy that has caught John's attention. Like, John doesn't really tweet after fights, didn't do it after any Sergei Pavlovich fight or anything like that. But after Tom Aspinall's most recent win, he got John's attention. So do you see a world where John fights either of these guys in a unification bout, should he beat Stipe, if that fight happens, let's just say International Fight Week? Do you think he would stick around maybe 2025 and fight one of these guys? Or what do you think actually happens here?
If Sergei Pavlovich wins, hell no. The risk-reward factor is just too much for John to even hang around. Also, you got to consider, John is about to turn 37 July of next year. I wouldn't see him hanging around to fight Pavlovich. If Pavlovich starts as Aspinall, I just don't see it happening, because Pavlovich is not a big enough name, and John's reached that level of his career where there isn't too much more that you can do to add on to your legacy, aside from beating the so-called greatest UFC heavyweight, Stipe Miocic. Aspinall's a little bit more intriguing. If Aspinall beats Pavlovich and makes a successful title defense and then proves that he's like this budding superstar, I think John would entertain that fight, because there's more financial upside to fight Aspinall than there would be for Pavlovich. But both ways, I don't see John sticking around very long, because as we know, he's considered the greatest fighter on the planet right now. And the only real fight for him is Francis Ngannou. None of these other fights really matter. Nobody in the UFC matters to Jon Jones other than Stipe. And then, we know it's not going to happen unless Dana does some funny shit. But Francis Ngannou and Jon Jones is the only fight that I think piques Jon Jones's true interest. Aspinall would have some work to do to get there. Pavlovich, that shit ain't happening under no circumstances. John will just ride off to the sunset and call it a night.
Last thing real quick, Jed, I'll start with you. Low-key banger for UFC 295. What's the fight that is flying under the radar that nobody's talking about that you feel we could be talking about on the post-fight show?
Low-key banger? I guess let's just go real low-key. If you're going to be Bear, be Grizzly, right? Josh Van, Kevin Borjas, two flyweights who just scrapped their ass off prior to getting to the UFC. Maybe not the most interesting fights in their debuts, but these dudes, if you ever went back and watched them competing in the regional circuit, they're just hell on wheels, both of them. No one is going to care about this fight at all. It's like the second fight of the evening. It's flyweights, but man, they're going to get after it to kick the show off.
Andreas, where are you at? What's the low-key banger? He stole you? He stole you.
Yeah, he stole my answer. I was looking at this card, because obviously the Frivola St. Denis fight is a banger. I don't think it's not sneaking up on anybody who watches MMA. But that was the fight that I was very intrigued with. I think it could be an action-packed fight. I think it could be exciting. The rest of this card, I don't know if there's anything that's going to sneak up on us and surprise us like a low-key banger. I was thinking about the Lupe Godinez to Ricci fight that could be actually pretty good, but it could also suck. There are a lot of fights on this prelims that could potentially be trash. We've had some look, man. In the year that Sean Strickland became the UFC middleweight champion of the world, nothing ever makes sense. So I can't pick anything that completely stands out as a low key banger, except for the Joshua Van fight. I was very interested in that fight. I don't have another answer, so I'm just going to agree with Jed. Damn it.
I can change mine to the third round of Jared Gordon, Marco Madsen, because it's always funny to watch Marco Madsen be dead tired and just try to survive for 5 minutes. He's going to be stone gassed and just hanging on.
Shout out to Kyung Ho Kang, Mr. Perfect, John Castaneda. I think that fight's going to be pretty wild. Catch weight at 138. Nazim Sadikov and Slava should be a lot of fun, too.
If Sadikov doesn't wrestle, that fight's going to be real fun. If he just looks at any tape and is like, all you have to do is shoot a double on this homie and he will go down, then that fight's going to be boring as shit.
Well, we will find out this Saturday at UFC 295, but the UFC made some big announcements. Dana White has already revealed the first 3 main events of the first quarter of 2024. We'll discuss that next. Point for round 3 goes to... It was a very close round, but when your opponent says, I have to agree with what he just said, it's got to go to that man. Jed Meshew, it's 2-1.
Yeah. Let's go flyweights.
Okay.
Love flyweights.
Dana White took to social media. There was some rumor and innuendo. What's going to happen at UFC 297? Is it going to be Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira? Is it going to be something else? Turns out the middleweight title on the line, of all places, to send Sean Strickland for his first middleweight title defense, you send him to Toronto, Canada to take on Dricus Du Plessis. That will headline UFC 297. That'll be the second of 2 title fights. Right now, Raquel Pennington, Mayra Bueno Silva on tap for the vacant women's bantamweight title. Finally, we get to the answer to that question: who will win the belt after Amanda Nunes? February 18th, we found out. TBD as far as location, although California seems to be rumored. Ilia Topuria seems to think it's going to be in LA. Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilia Topuria. And then March, I believe it's March 9th, according to Sean O'Malley. It's going to be Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Cheeto Vera 2 for the bantamweight title. The Sugar Show's first bantamweight title defense since winning the belt against Aljamain Sterling. Andreas, your reaction to the first quarter of 2024, 3 main events, 3 title fights. You like these?
If you would have told me at this time last year that at UFC 297, the middleweight title fight would be Dricus Du Plessis versus Sean Strickland, and we get Raquel Pennington versus Mayra Bueno Silva, I would have said, get the fuck out of here. What crack are you smoking? Alas, here we are. That fight, that entire card, unless you put some bangers on, might be in competition for a piss poor buy rate for a pay-per-view. However, the other 2 title fights, Topuria and Volkanovski, of course I'm interested in that. Volk going back to featherweight to do what he does best against a guy who think is probably a legitimate threat, and we don't know where Volk's psyche is at after 2 consecutive losses to Makhachev. I'm interested in that. While I'm very interested in Sean O'Malley versus Cheeto Vera because Cheeto won, this should be Merab, and I'm so sick of it. Like, what does Merab have to do to get the title opportunity? Dana just doesn't like him. All that being said, it's going to be a sellable fight. The promo package should be fantastic for it. The build should be there because I don't know how much longer Sean O'Malley can act like he never lost to Cheeto Vera, but that's what's going to happen, and it's all intriguing. So the first card, stinker. The other 2 main events, very interested in. I'll give it a B. I'll give it right on with a B. Because, man, DDP and Strickland, what happened? How did we get here? I don't know, man. I think I'm high.
Jed, as the man who,
best.
I was going to say, as a man who earned one of the few moral victories on this show by boldly predicting that DDP would beat Robert Whittaker and then getting skipped over, we thought maybe he'd be screwed after Sean Strickland won the middleweight title and how things have played out. Justice for DDP. Gets his opportunity to fight Sean Strickland in Toronto, which I think is still pretty weird, but it's still going to happen. And then we get Volkanovski Topuria, fresh off the Volkanovski knockout loss to Makhachev. As long as it's not in January, it's not too far back from that, but at least it's not in January. And then we get O'Malley Vera 2, which will be probably the biggest fight you can make in this division right now. Andreas gave these announcements a B. Where are you at?
Today, say. Look, and we'll start with the Toronto. It is weird that this fight's happening in Toronto. You know whose fault that is? The entire nation of Canada. Give us a fucking fighter who's good, man. Like that's it. Whether you can't, who do you bring to Toronto other than I guess Charles Oliveira to headline pay-per-views? Canada doesn't have anybody anymore. Get back on it. Like let's make something happen, Canada. So instead, you get this weird fight, which is I love this fight so much. I love this fight so very, very much. It's the fight I'm like, I said it as soon as Strickland won the belt, I was like, the fight I'm probably the most interested in the entire sport is him versus DDP because it's weird and it's stupid and it's hilarious to me that Andreas points out who would have thought a year ago this is where we'd be. Not me. Certainly not me. And instead, like, it's going to be awesome. And then just the dynamics of the fight. Sean Strickland's endless gas tank versus DDP, who appears to be gassed in 3 minutes in every fight, except for he got the nose job. So maybe he's good now. I couldn't love this fight anymore. It's just delightful. I'm a huge fan of it. Don't care at all about the co-main event. I'm not even sure we should treat it. Like we should treat this weekend's event as the true title fight. I don't think we should treat my boy in Silva versus Rocky Pennington as a title fight, not because they don't deserve it, but because that whole weight class should just be burnt to the ground. So, that's where you're at there. 298. Look, I'm happy. This is what I wanted the whole time. I just want Alexander Volkanovski to fight dudes his weight. And not just fight Max Holloway over and over and over again. Just fight dudes in your weight class and beat them if you can, because there are a lot of dudes you haven't fought. And Ilia Topuria is chief among them. I think the only knock I have on this fight is it still feels a little quick to come back after what we just saw Volk do, but it not being in January makes that a little better. This fight is on paper and on the merits is obviously the best of this bunch. And I'm super, super pumped for it. I think it's going to be a banger, because I'm very high on Topuria and obviously Volkanovski, one of the best fighters we've ever seen. And then you cap it all off, and part of me wants to agree with Andreas. I'm like, yeah, why can't Merab get it? It's not that Dana hates Merab. Maybe he does. I can't speak to that. Sean O'Malley's nobody's fool. He's not going to fight Merab Dvalishvili. I can't imagine a person he is less likely to fight than Merab Dvalishvili. There's simply nothing in that fight for him. But here's the trick. He's going to lose to Chito. We're about to live in a world where Chito Vera is one of like 4 champions in the UFC who might not be one of the 5 best fighters in the weight class. Chito's going to beat O'Malley. Like, it's an awful style matchup for Sean. And he's taking because he thinks he could win, and it's certainly the biggest money. And instead, he's going to lose his belt, and Chito's going to be the champ. And this is going to rule. I love everything that's happened over the last couple of weeks. I'm super pumped for this slate. We're kicking off 2024 well.
What's the most intriguing fight of the 3, Jed?
I'm going to go Strickland Du Plessis. I think you could the probably real answer is Volk Topuria. But I just have a special place in my heart for this very weird matchup between these two dudes that a year and a half ago, everyone would have been like, they'll never fight for a title, much less they're going to fight each other for the true and honest belt.
Andreas, I assume you don't agree with Jed here.
No, I absolutely do not. And I mean, to Jed's point, this is the division that had Robert Whitaker, Israel Adesanya, Alex Pereira, and these two are fighting for the middleweight title? This is ridiculous.
They beat those homies.
Man, I don't care.
It's weird, but it's true.
It's weird. It's a bizarre world.
They dummied Israel Adesanya and Robert Whitaker. They made them look like rank amateurs. I don't understand it, but it happened.
It doesn't make any sense, and it would make even more sense if that fight ends up sucking. Because to your point, like Sean Strickland's not terribly exciting. DDP dies after 3 minutes of every fight, but then he surges. That fight could just be trash. That whole card might be utter and like it might be garbage. But I'm going with Topuria and Volk because Volk is he hasn't cleaned out the featherweight division. As great as he is, there are names still hanging around. And Topuria has been just ultra violent lately. And we don't know what Volk is at this point. That post-fight presser where he talked about how much he needed to fight and how he doesn't like to be inactive because of the dark thoughts that he have. Like, he needs this turnaround. But the body and mind play tricks on each other. And Topuria is the worst person to test that against But we will see. We will see. I'm very, very intrigued by this fight because if Volkanovski loses another fight, remember we were just having this conversation about he could be one of the greatest mixed martial artists ever if he beats Islam. That was back in January this year. He could potentially win 3 in a row. MMA is so unkind to people that lose because once you start losing, you usually can't stop. That's why this fight is really intriguing to me. And if Topuria becomes champion, that division becomes even more intriguing because guess what? Max Holloway might find a way to get that title back. So there's so much going on in the featherweight division that I love this fight, style-wise, mentally between these two fighters, what it means for the future, what it means for legacies. I'm picking that. And then the O'Malley-Cheeto fight, dude, I'm saying the same thing. Cheeto's going to beat O'Malley and just fuck up everything. So sorry, your cash cow is about to get beat. Good job, Sean, for picking the guy that's going to beat you.
Last thing on this.
It's going to be so funny.
Well, it's interesting because 2 of these 3 matchups are very strange in a lot of respect, even though we knew O'Malley and Vera was coming, but we have contenders who arguably deserve it more. And then Topuria, Volk, we knew this was coming anyways. Andreas, who has the most to lose of these 6 guys?
Volkanovski, by far. To everything that I just said. The man was in the conversation to be one of the greatest mixed martial artists of all time. You lose 3 in a row, and you become Chris Weidman, Luke Rockhold. You become one of these champions that people thought were going to be great, and then in 2 years from now, we forget who they are. And that's crazy, but that's just how MMA moves. Volk has everything riding on this because, and I know people will give an excuse to say, well, he fought at lightweight against Makhachev. Losses are losses to people, especially when it comes to GOAT conversations. You lose, nobody cares. You just lost. And losing 3 in a row, I don't know how that affects his psyche as a human, not just as a fighter, as a human, because then you start wondering, how good are you really? He has everything to lose against Topuria because his legacy is on the line. Everybody else has something to gain. And even Sean O'Malley, as much as he's a star and the company is riding his shoulders as terms of mainstream success, he could lose and we'll just be like, that's cool. But Volkanovski has already proven to a lot of people that he deserves to be in that conversation. He was ranked number 1 pound for pound, but he loses. It's a different conversation.
I mean, to be fair, Volk did pitch a perfect game against Yair Rodriguez in between those 2 losses. So that's true. Has not lost at featherweight in the UFC. And there is a lot riding on this, but at the same time, if he loses to Ilia, he's probably going to get an immediate rematch, so he has the chance to get it back. And then you look at Sean Strickland, who Jed has become just an overnight sensation, especially in the United States. So him fighting in Toronto again is weird. DDP kind of ins and outs with the UFC in a lot of respects, but highly touted up and comer. He's had exciting fights. Marlon Vera is over, win or lose. Sean O'Malley's over, win or lose. But now, especially after what Francis did, Sean's talking about boxing fights and becoming a massive star. And if he beats Chito Vera, all of those things are in play. But if he loses, at least for the short term, all those things are gone for the time being. So is it Volk who has the most to lose of these 6 guys, or can you make an argument for somebody else?
I'm going to go O'Malley. I'm not sure it's right. I think Andreas might be correct here because everything he said about Volk is spot on, man. Like we talk about it all the time. I've been on this program arguing at the top of my lungs that for as good as Alexander Volkanovski is, he is not greater than Jose Aldo as a featherweight because the resumes aren't the same. One dude was the dude for 7 years and the other dude's beaten the same dude 3 times or whatever. And having people be like, no, never lost, bro. 13 seconds, homie, whatever. I'm like, okay, like just wait. Father time comes for us all, motherfuckers. Like it's going to come. And if it comes for Volk, it's going to come violently if Ilia Topuria is the dude to handle it because the only way he gets down is violently. And it'll make everybody reconsider his entire career. That's unfair, but that is how this game moves. But I think even if that happens, I think Volk still has cemented himself in an echelon, in a pantheon of greatness that won't get taken away from him, at least not for one performance. If he sticks around and just starts losing and does a BJ into his career, everybody gets reconsidered. But I think this one fight won't cost him that. But for Sean O'Malley, this one fight is everything because he goes out here and he beats Cheeto. It's going to be the biggest fight in the history of this weight class. It's going to be one of the bigger fights of next year based on sort of how popular both these two dudes are. he can write his own ticket. And if he loses, he can't. And he's young. Maybe he can get back to it. He'll still succeed. I'm not saying he won't be a successful business person and fighter. But if he loses this, he's never boxing Gervonta Davis. He's never doing any of those things. And while I think that's outside of reality realistically at this moment in time, if he goes and beats him in a pay-per-view that sells 800,000 buys, he goes and beats Cheeto, that becomes more of an option. The UFC is going to be more willing to open that door up for a guy like him. Even if he's not the best bantamweight in the world, it doesn't matter. Like he'll just be in that level, and then he can command that. So a loss to Cheeto is going to take away a lot of future business for him. He can still have a lot of business, but I think he is going to lose by far the most dollars and cents if he loses this upcoming fight.
Interesting times, 2024 coming together, just like this matchup here on BTL. The point for round 4 goes to we just had it in the third round. When you agree with the opponent gets it. Andreas, it's 2-2. Let's go.
Yeah.
Who could have seen this coming?
This never happens on BTL. We never go to the knockout round. So
something different.
We're in rarefied air, gentlemen. This is history in the making. Right now, we go to the knockout round. Each of these individuals will get the same question. They will each have 60 seconds to respond. Without Brian Campbell here, we don't have to worry about the time going over. And once they give their responses, we will go to the peeps. You guys will go ahead and vote in the chat, and we will decide a winner. I believe the poll may be up now. I'm not really sure, but we'll figure it out. Jed, you are the winner from 2 weeks ago, the most recent winner on the program. You want to go first or you want to go last?
Mike, what do you think I should do?
I don't know.
Hold on.
I think you're going to have fun with this either way. But
I've got a helper here. I'm going to ask my buddy the 8-Ball. Oh, Magic 8-Ball, should I go first? Reply hazy, try again. Oh, Magic 8-Ball, should I go first?
This is riveting theater, folks.
Better not tell you now. One more time. Magic 8-Ball, should I go first?
If that thing explodes.
Okay, it got asked again later, so we're going to say no. We're going to go second since it refused to give me an answer.
3 in a row. Wow. If the gambling gods would just be on your side sometimes. Like if the Magic 8-Ball gave you those 3 answers for the Michelle Watterson bet that you made, you'd be in a whole different place right now. But that's neither here nor there. Andreas, we will begin with you. You have 60 seconds. We got the main event and the co-main event for UFC 297. UFC 298 has his main event. UFC 299 has his main event. But one of the big questions that has come from these announcements, what about UFC 300, which we assume is going to happen in April? So we're going to do some fantasy matchmaking right now, Andreas Hale. Not only are you going to book the main event for UFC 300, but you're also going to book the co-main event for UFC 300, which is going down possibly in April. Who the hell knows? Main and co-main for the historic UFC 300 pay-per-view event, and go.
All right, the main event will obviously be Conor McGregor versus Justin Gaethje. No, not Michael Chandler. We're going to send Conor to the hell pits of fire and brimstone, because that is the all-violent fight that I think everyone wants to see. And if Conor believes as much shit as he talks, he doesn't really want to fight Michael Chandler, well, guess what? Now you're going to go fight Justin Gaethje. Do that. And then we will do Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev. We'll have an all-lightweight UFC 300, because the future of the company rides on it, because you got to figure out, if Conor wins, he's probably going to get a lightweight title fight. So that's this ultra-violet main and co-main of UFC 300, where we get Conor McGregor and Justin Gaethje in a battle to the death. And then Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev to really figure out, is Charles not good enough to beat Islam, or is Islam just truly the man? Book it. Give it to me. Argue with your mother. That's what I want.
Damn. The BMF title getting top billing over the undisputed lightweight title. Now this is madness. This is madness in a world where we're getting Sean Strickland DDP. Nothing's out of question here. Nothing's out of question. Jed, we go to you. Fantasy matchmake time. I have a feeling where I think you may be going with one of these fights, but I'm not sure. UFC 300, main event, co-main event. Iron it out for us. What are we going to see in April, potentially? 1 minute on the clock, go.
So, I mean, there's a lot of ways to go, and I love what Andreas did, but he's just dead wrong. One, Islam and Charles aren't going to fight at 300. Ramadan's going to get in the way of my boy doing his business for that one. So, and then I would love. I'm the original Conor versus Gaethje. I've been calling for that for like 10 years at this point. I would love that. I think they are going to do the 2 bites at the apple and do Conor on 301 or whatever. Instead, we're going to get it. It's going to be Jon Jones Stipe headlining 300. Jon is going to come back a little earlier, a little faster on the timeline. They're going to expedite it. It's not like he needs a full training camp to beat Stipe's ass. He's going to be fine. They're going to do that. And your co-main, that's where things get weird because you could do a lot of stuff. I'm going to go on a limb here for the co-main. I'm going to say that co-main is going to be Alexander Volkanovski, Ilia Topuria 2, because Volk doesn't know how to protect his own brain health. He's going to try and turn it around real fast, and he's going to get got again.
There you go. Both are intriguing fights. I am stunned, Jed. I'm stunned. I didn't get a magic wand prediction. DDP Isri. Would DDP is the champion?
About it.
Yeah.
I thought about it, but I didn't want to do that, and it feels more likely that Volk will be the one who tries to turn around quickly than DDP will.
Well, cast your votes, everybody. I believe the poll is up. Who wins? Is it going to be Jed Mishu? No cannonball to be had this week, so I don't want to sway you. Versus Andreas
I also
Hill.
almost went Grasso Shevchenko 3, but I don't think anyone would be excited about that.
Could get Zhang Wei Li, Yan Zhou on that card.
You could.
Surely that fight's going to go boost like 298 or something, right?
Jed, how do you not book Conor at UFC 300? Like how?
Because
they're
going to do him at 301 because they'll just make the money anyway.
No, Conor likes to make history. He likes to own shit. He wants to own UFC 300. That's what he wants. That's what we're going to get.
They didn't book him at 200.
They tried. But him and Nate
had
this weird thing where they took each other's backs. It was great theater, great stuff.
And then instead he was 202. Like they're just going to do that with him again. It would make sense. Tried. It would make a ton of sense. But if they do it, it's going to be Michael Chandler. It's not going to be Gaethje, which sucks because it'd be way cool if it was Gaethje. But they're not going to have fun like that.
The shit. I fantasy booked the shit. I'm not trying to use any kind of reality. I ain't thinking about no damn Ramadan. I'm fantasy booking this card.
I'm just trying to predict the future. That's where we're different, you know. I try to see all the angles.
Yes. Well, cast your votes. Tomorrow, 1:30 p.m. Eastern, everybody, we'll have the UFC 295 preview show, so get excited for that. There's a lot going on tomorrow. We'll have the UFC 295 ceremonial weigh-ins. Gamebred Bare Knuckle, back at it again tomorrow. That card's freaking crazy. It's Friday, tomorrow night. That's free on YouTube.
Is that the heavyweight thing?
Yeah, Roy Nelson.
And Alan Belcher. A lot of UFC. Randy Costa, Jason Knight's on that card. It's going to be freaking insane. We get a live MMA hour as well, 6 p.m. Eastern, live from City Winery in New York City. If you can't get a ticket, too bad because they're sold out, but you can watch it all on our YouTube channel starting at 6 p.m. Eastern with Ariel and the crew, some special guests. Should be lots of fun. And then, of course, Saturday, People's Pre-Fight Show with myself and Casey, and then watch party. Jose's on site in New York. Lots of coverage. So just stay with us. MMAfighting.com. As Jed likes to say, it's
terrific
a tremendous
website.
Great website.
Casey is here, which means we probably have a winner.
We do.
Okay.
Your winner today with 57% of the votes is... Jed Mishu.
It's the haircut. It was the damn haircut.
It's just too good. It's not the haircut, Mike. It's the giving to children. They wanted to support my gift to the children, and I support them for supporting me. Thank you. Thank you for that, guys.
Well, what else would you like to say to the peeps? You get 30 seconds to talk about whatever you want to talk about. I don't know if there's a Fight Circus event coming up this week or something you want to promote. What do you want to say to the peeps?
Not this week, but I think they're going to have another one coming this month. Always tune into Fight Circus. They're the only honest people in the business. Shouts to Bellator. You know, you had a good run. Your next week, probably the last card of all time. Looking forward to it. Let's go out on a high note, guys. And been a good year. Pretty pumped about 295. So let's have fun.
Andreas, we appreciate you joining the program. As you can see over, at least from what I'm looking at, your left shoulder, but your right shoulder, I see the Our Heroes Rock poster. I know a lot's been going on with that. You and Big E were in New York. Can you tell the folks a little bit about that?
Yeah, we had a screening for our cartoon, Our Heroes Rock, at the Urban World Film Festival. We actually sold it out. Me, Big E, Jonathan Davenport, who was a designer of pro wrestling gear. It's a cartoon we worked on for over 2.5 years. We finally had a world premiere, which means the wide release is coming soon. So we had a great response, but stay tuned. Mike, hopefully I'm back here and trying to get a dub. So when I get that dub, I can promote the actual release of this damn short. But I can't keep showing up here if I'm going to keep losing. And I can't believe I lost that vote. That was very disrespectful. But yes, Our Heroes Rock. We had its world premiere last week, and stay tuned for more information on that.
Well, you let
Andreas,
me
are
know.
you a Niners fan? Is that what I'm
Yes.
seeing over your shoulder as well? How's that
Very
going for you? How do we feel?
I
3
feel
in a row,
good.
tough.
I know it's
Yeah.
tough, but we needed that bye week. Debo is back, so I'm feeling pretty good about Jacksonville. Look, we're still going to get to the NFC Championship at least. We're that good. I'm feeling fine. I ain't worried.
No concerns that Brock Purdy is not very good if he doesn't have Christian McCaffrey and Debo out there.
No, because he's going to have Christian McCaffrey, Debo, Kittle, and Ayuk. So it matters.
I mean,
If Brock Purdy sucks,
That helps. That'll make you real
I
good.
don't know.
I might be a competent quarterback with that.
Me too. I could get a few touchdowns. Indeed.
I mean, look, you could have Mac Jones as your quarterback, and, well,
I'm sorry.
nobody really wants that unless they're playing the Bills, apparently, on like 2 drives. But hit the music, Casey. We're done.
Speaking of the NFL, I saw the greatest stat of all time. You know, Atlanta guy, not a Falcons fan. Bijan Robinson has 1 touch inside the 5 yards this season. The Houston has allowed their kicker to be a running back for a field goal once this season. Same number, guys. Arthur Smith,
Unbelievable.
freaking genius.
God love them Falcons. 28-3, baby. 28-3. Let's go. We're back
Atlanta
next week to
sports are
recap
a
295.
misery.
Maybe Bellator's final card and much more for Andreas, for Jed, Casey on the ones and twos, the iconic voice special that takes you home. I'm Mike Hack. Back next week. Good night, everybody.
Love y'all.
This has been Between the Links, an MMA fighting production on the Vox Media Network.